What's poppin', beautiful people? Anthony Tay checking in with Tay Vision Media. It's been a minute. Last episode was a solo episode. We filmed 2 episodes since then. Have not released them because I'm waiting on the release forms, but they're coming. Today, I'm going to talk about something that I've been talking about. By the way, I am neurodivergent. If any of you are neurodivergent, you know what this feels like. I constantly have conversations in my head. I constantly talk to myself, right? Not like a crazy person, not like somebody who doesn't know that they're talking to themselves. I know that I'm doing it sometimes. There's times where I'm going to the bathroom and like I'm having a conversation. But the thing is, like, it's not even about anything important. It's just like I'm talking to myself, right? Anyways, I digress. So something that I kind of like contemplate in my head a lot because I see it, right? Like I see it on social media. I see it in like real life. I see it in my family. And it's called what I consider a generational clash, right? So a generational clash for me is like we're in this weird. I feel like we've been in this phase for a long time, and I think people talk about it. I don't know. It's not like I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but it's like I think I see it more and more now as opposed to like before, right? So for instance, I was born in 1986. I was born and I'm not trying to like ruffle feathers with this episode, and I definitely am not. It's not like a Target episode, right? Like I'm just talking about like how things were, how they progressed, and like kind of what they are now. So when I was growing up in school, the whole like transgender movement, for instance, hold on, let me finish, don't get ahead of me, was unknown to me, right? Like I remember the first time I saw a man dressed as a woman, I was like, whoa. And but it was like in a drag show, right? It was a drag queen. It was a drag show. I don't even remember where I was. I think I was with my grandmother, and it wasn't on purpose. It's not like she took me to something. I like happened to see it, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And like I knew it was a man, so I was like, that's kind of weird. Anyways, whatever. Flash forward to now, like being trans is like it's an entire mentality. It's an entire culture. It's now widely accepted by um, most people in the US. I don't want to say everybody, but I mean, it's widely accepted more so now than it was then, right? That's just like my first example. I think I hit it real hard with my first example, and I'm gonna go back to it. But to add on to what I mean by like a generational clash means like you've got people that were before us, and I'm talking about like my generation specifically. I was born in 1986, and I read something the other day, and it was like people born between 1985 and 1995 are the most unique generation that has ever lived so far. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Let me see if I can find the quote because it struck me. It was so true too. Where'd you go? Stand by. Okay. So it says people born between 1985 and 1995 are the most unique generation of all time. Here's why. They are in between 2 generations. The one before the internet and technology took over in the generation after, right? So I'm going to keep going, sorry. The generation before us was old school and believed in working hard. The generation after us believed in working smart. We saw it all: radio, TV, Mario, WAP Trick. I don't know what that is. Nokia, Nintendo 64, Samsung, iPhone, PS4, tape, CD, DVD. Bro, CDs, LimeWire, burning a CD, getting all kinds of viruses on your computer, usually porn, primo. DVD, Mixit, MIG 32. I don't know what that is. Netflix, Snapchat, emojis, and virtual reality. The generation before us can be scanned with simple emails asking for money and offering love. The generation after us knows it's better to have 4 emails: one for serious stuff, social media, financial transactions, and one for experiments for things that you don't trust. Tell me why I got like 5 or 6 emails. We're the generation that knows tradition and questions it. This is where I'm at now. I've been doing this for like the past year. Like I've questioned so much about my reality because it's almost like I believe the simulation theory, right? Like we are in a simulation and we are trained to not question it, right? You're like was when I was talking about in my previous episode, right? Like banks, for instance. I realized that they serve a purpose, but at no point did we agree to a lot of the stipulations that the banking industry just came up with, right? Like it's I don't know, man. Like we just say okay to so much shit that it's like I'm starting to question everything now. Like I'll get into it. Hold on. We are the generation that knows tradition and questions it, picking from it what makes sense to us. The generation before us knew no questions. The generation after us knows no tradition. It's so true. We are the gap between the industrial age and the internet age. We understand both sides from experience. We should be running the world. This is talking about like politics, right? The old guys don't understand what's going on anymore. The new guys don't fully understand what's going. Hold on. The old guys don't understand what's going on anymore. The new guys don't fully understand what's going on. Wow. Where what's going on came from. Wow. I feel like I had a stroke just now. Anyways, so when you talk about like all these things from a generational standpoint, it's simply to me, it's like extremely it's fascinating, right? Because a lot of people will go through their next few years and not question anything. But then there's people out there that question everything and they're labeled as crazy, right? For instance, I talked about banks last time. I watched this dude, Charlie Kirk, on Instagram, where he goes to like college campuses and he asks people, what is a woman? I don't know. Let me see when Charlie Kirk was born, because that might answer a lot of questions. Hey, Siri, when was Charlie Kirk born? 1993. That's interesting because he's nearing the end of that like period, right? But he's still considered a millennial. But he goes around to college campuses and he asks people, "What is a woman?" And the clips that he shows on his social media, they're trippy, right? Because they're the newer generation that's like, "Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Blah 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 blah. Why does it matter what a woman is? Yada yada yada." And he stumps them most of the time. He's like, I am a male. I have I don't even know what it is, XY chromosomes. Can I give birth? And they're like, no. They're like, okay, so what is a woman, right? Because he's conforming his ideology and his theory to a very basic principle, right? Man and woman. I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's two genders. There's a man, there's a woman. Sexuality, identities, you can be whatever you want. I mean, this is a free country, a free world for the most part. You can do whatever you feel like you want to do, but the idea that everybody around you has to agree to it is something that I struggle with dealing with. Now, full disclaimer, right? I'm in a creative industry. I'm in a dance industry. I've been a dancer for most of my life. I've found that I'm attracted to femininity, right? It doesn't have a gender specific label to it. Like I am attracted to femininity no matter where I go. I have found trans people, not like purposely, but I've come across trans people that I find extremely attractive because they are feminine, right? I am attracted to femininity. I am not attracted to masculinity. Some people will look at this and label me as bisexual, gay, whatever, because of the base theory of if I like somebody that has a dick, then I am bisexual, right? I don't really consider myself bisexual. I consider myself straight because, again, I'm attracted to femininity. That's as simple as it is for me. There's somebody that will argue with me, well, like that makes you bisexual because you like guys. I would be challenged by that by a very masculine presenting man, right? If a woman born trans person presents themselves in front of me as masculine, that's not attractive to me. I'm not going to be attracted to that. I'm not going to want to pursue that in a sexual way. So therefore it is what it like that to me is as simple as it goes. But it's like parenting too, right? So I'm gonna transfer off that whole thing. The reason I went to that whole conversation and that whole topic was because it's like when you ask a person that was born before 1980, for instance, about transgender, they, them, anything else, right? It's you get the same reaction. They're like, "Ugh," right? You ask somebody that was born in 2000, they're like, people can be who they want to be. But then you ask somebody like me, and we could go either way, right? Like I'm not against anybody being who they are, right? But if somebody presents in front of me and says, "Hey, I'm a dog, I'm a furry, whatever the fuck that is, I need you to address me as such," I'm not going to do it. I'm not, because I it's my choice, right? Like if I tell you to address me as ma'am, you're going to look at me and be like, "Okay," right? Like why would I address you as ma'am? Like clearly you are a sir, right? There was that video. Oh God. It was a video of this. I'm gonna get in trouble for this. There's a video of a person in GameStop, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know that this video is fucking hilarious. And the dude, GameStop employee, is like trying to be super cordial, but it's a person presenting themselves as a woman wearing woman's clothing, but his voice is real masculine, right? And so naturally, this gentleman keeps calling this person sir, and he was like, "Excuse me, it's ma'am," and I'm like, "Oh shit, here we go." And so the video keeps going, and he was like, he didn't do. I couldn't tell if he was doing it on purpose because I couldn't see his face, but I think he was. I think it was an accident. I think it was genuinely like just programming. But what tripped me out was he said sir again, and he goes, "Motherfucker." He was like, "Call me sir one more time and I will show you a damn sir." And I was like, all right, man, you just kind of switched it up a little bit. Like, stick to your roots. You know what I'm saying? Stick to your guns. Be one, be the other. You can't be a switch. In my mind, I was like, okay, that kind of like you collapse on yourself a little bit. But the video itself was funny. Please don't come for me. I find funny what I find funny. It's not like I tried to find it funny. It was just funny when I saw it. Anyways, so again, the reason that I went through this as far as like the generational clash for the topic was because you ask somebody before me, they're going to have this, most of them are going to have the same reaction. You have somebody after me, they're going to be like, okay, well, I mean, people can be who they want to be. But again, nobody's questioning a lot of stuff. Like shit's just happening and we're just kind of like, okay, mom. Okay. So we go from like that to like parenting, right? So parenting when I was growing up, much different. Today would be considered borderline, if not fully abusive, right? Yelling, spanking, belts, hitting me with objects, right? That's how I was raised. Now, I'm not saying I was abused as a child. I was very well taken care of. My father was a great man, is a great man, but he was strict, right? He was in law enforcement. It's like my way or no way. There's no such thing as, oh, let me hear about how you're feeling. It's like, do what the fuck I said to do, or I'm gonna bust your butt, right? It was the driving in the car and whining and crying and stop crying, or I'll give you a reason to cry, that type shit, right? The whole like, you know, you got in trouble at school and you had to wait for your parent or for your dad to get home. This was me a lot. If I got in trouble at school, my mom would pick me up. She would call my dad and be like, "Hey, you know what your son did?" And I could hear the conversation. He's like, "All right, we'll put him in his room till I get there." And then she would turn around and say some slick shit. And so this entire time, my dad usually wouldn't get home for like 4 or 5 hours after I got home from school. So I'm sitting in my room, shitting myself, waiting on my father to walk in the door, knowing that he's going to bust my butt, knowing fully well that that's what's going to happen. 4 hours felt like 4 fucking days. It sucked. But that's the generation that I was raised in, right? Now I'm lucky to have 2 children of my own, and I don't parent them the same way because to me, parenting needed an evolution. It needed a change because I look at people my age and we've either turned out really, really well or we've got a laundry list of fucking problems. My children, one of the biggest things for me is like, I remember not ever being heard when I was younger, because as a kid in that generation, you didn't know shit. You didn't want to know shit. You didn't need to know shit. Your parents knew everything. Listen to your parents. They're big, you're small. They're smart, you're dumb. That's how it was. Now it's like, I realize, like, I have an 8-year-old, right? My 8-year-old has emotions. He's got feelings. He's got thoughts. He's not stupid. Like, he feels certain things. And parenting with my wife is interesting because I'll watch shit and I'll hear them talk, and in my mind, I'm like, damn, like, he really got a point. You know, like, he's got a valid argument. So I'm like, how am I supposed to, in good nature, just blindly go along with it and be like, you know what? Listen to your mother. Right. And I know some parents are going to be like, no, you guys got to support each other. 100% we support each other. But like, I'll talk to my wife after the fact and I'll be like, look, hey, just gonna let you know, like, he had a really good point. Like, you probably should have listened to what he said, because it seemed like he kind of knew what he was talking about and like he just needed to get that across, right? So now my parenting approach is a lot different than how I was raised, right? The whole idea that I have of a generational clash is you got this upper generation, meaning like the people that are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s. You've got this newer generation of people that are in their early 20s, early teens, the woke culture. So that was the other thing too. Like, woke culture, I don't know if it's really woke culture. I think it's just people that are questioning the norm, questioning tradition, questioning generational awareness, right? Like, why is it that way? I've become that way. 10 years ago, I started questioning shit. I'm like, why do we have to do this? Why is this a thing, right? One of the biggest things, and this is going to seem so remedial and so stupid, one of the biggest things that I got so mad about, like it was actually going to happen to me, was when the lottery gets really high, I play it, because you never know. Never going to win if you don't play. But then I look at the jackpots, right? Hear me out. I look at the jackpots. $800 million, right? Your cash value option, if you win an 800 million jackpot, is maybe $300 million. Now, $300 million is a lot of fucking money, but $500 million goes away before you even have a chance to do or say anything about it. Then, and it goes to the government, right? Then, when you get that $300 million, whatever you buy, you have to pay taxes on it. So you're telling me I paid you $500 million in taxes, and now I've got to pay taxes on shit that I buy after the fact? Why? And there will people that there's people that will be like, well, here's why this has to happen. Blah, blah, blah. But why, right? Who said that had to be a thing? Like, who imposed that on somebody? If you play something and you become lucky enough to win it, all of a sudden now you owe more than half of that to the U.S. government and you will never see it again. It's not like they're holding it for you. It's not like they're keeping it so you can use it later. It's there. Like, now the U.S. government won $500 million. We didn't win that shit. So it's like little stuff. It's not little, but stuff like that, I start to question, right? And it's not like I look too deep into it because I don't want to waste my time with it. I don't want to waste my time trying to figure out why that is, because it doesn't matter. It is, right? When people don't agree with something and you start protesting, it's almost like, okay, we live in a free country. Now, again, peaceful protesting versus violent protesting, that's completely different, right? But the way I look at this is like, people don't listen when it's quiet. People don't listen when it's calm, composed, eloquent, articulate. They don't listen. They don't pay attention. But when people get violent, history remembers it, right? History remembers it. With Rosa Parks, like, she was one of the very few people that I can remember from a peaceful protest standpoint where she accomplished what she was trying to accomplish by spinning a certain narrative way back in the day and making it to where it's like obvious, like this is not right. And she didn't have to hurt anybody. She didn't have to kill anybody. She didn't have to do any of these things. Shit happened afterwards, but Rosa Parks stood her ground. She did her thing, right? Um, I don't know, man. I truly think that our society in general just has it wrong because nobody wants to listen to anybody, right? You've got reps in Congress, like what the fuck is her name? The psycho lady from Alabama, I think, Miss Congressman or Senator Green, whoever the fuck she is. Like her ideologies and her theories are so radical that it's scary, but she's still a member of one of the highest levels of government in our country, right? And people allow that. Maybe if you stopped and listened, because again, I feel like, you know, and bless her heart, I feel like she might have these radical ideologies because for the longest time nobody listened. And so now she's up there and she's so dramatic that people have to know it. People have to remember it. People have to say, oh, yeah, I remember that crazy lady. Or fuck yeah, brother, America. Whatever they think, like now people know who she is because she's so radical. I don't know her history, but I'm theorizing at the moment that she might be like this now because for so long, maybe she was quiet, maybe she was eloquent, maybe she was trying to be diplomatic, and all of a sudden she realized it wasn't working, so switched her profile to being like completely radical. Now people know who she is and they're recognizing like, you know, what she's trying to say, whatever. But either way, I feel like the idea of it is that our society is crumbled for multiple reasons. Are there good parts of our society? Of course there are, but there's so many parts that just simply don't make sense that it's just like police officers, right? Law enforcement. And just before anybody comes for me in this, I'm former law enforcement. I went to FLETC 2 times. I was under DHS for a while. Like I'm familiar and I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. And there's a lot of stuff I didn't agree with then either. But the absolute authority and protection that law enforcement officers get with almost zero accountability is crazy to me, right? When they abuse their authority, right, and they don't respect the American public, they don't respect the public that they serve, they can get away with it because they're law enforcement, right? I've seen so many interactions where I've watched a law enforcement officer interact with a minority or even a majority, right? And their attitude is so malfunctioned that they cause a problem, right? Because they're coming with a position of authority, right? There's something that we refer to in law enforcement as the use of force continuum. Our entire purpose in law enforcement is to gain voluntary compliance using the least amount of force necessary. But when an officer comes up with their chest out, with their voice raised because they're angry, they've had a bad day, they had a bad traffic stop, whatever it is, you're causing unnecessary tension in a conversation that should not have it, right? Now, they'll come on here and say, well, we don't have enough resources. There's another fucking problem, right? Law enforcement community does not have enough resources to manage their stress, to manage their emotions, to go to a police academy, and that's it. And now all of a sudden you're qualified to do all of these things. I've always said there needed to be a federal regulatory agency that regulates every police department in America. It's not the FBI. They only investigate when they need to. They're regulated each individually by the state, right? Each state mandates what they have to do, what they don't have to do. And I know this is apparent, right? If you're a police officer in Texas and you go to Wyoming, you can't arrest somebody in Wyoming because your jurisdiction does not span all the way to Wyoming. Federal agents, they have jurisdiction all over the country, but police officers specifically who perform everyday duties, traffic stops, they do rec service, anything, investigation, whatever. They're severely undermanaged to the point where it's almost like we as a society are allowing them to fail and setting them up for failure. But there's a caveat to this, right? If somebody breaks into your house, who do you call? You call a police officer, right? If somebody kills your person or you're being threatened with death, who do you call? You call 911. You don't want them to show up with a mental health counselor. You don't want them to show up with an ambulance or a fire truck. You want a police officer with a fucking gun to show up to handle the situation so you don't die, right? Those same people will criticize and ostracize the same police department that is designed to protect them, right? But it's only because there's a huge disconnect. There's all this friction that does not have any end in sight, right? And I just think that as a society, we're on our way to a crumble, right? You have let's just go on this rant, right? So the whole, like, for instance, this is another generational thing, right? I feel like the whole, like, pretty girl privilege, sugar daddy, sugar baby movement, like dating now. People before us had it figured out, right? Married for 20, 30 years until they all died, right? Then you got to my generation. My generation saw the invention of the internet, right? That's why infidelity and all this other shit really started to pop off. Before, how do you cheat on somebody? You got to meet them in person. Got to see them at a cocktail party. You got to see them at a work event, right? At the store, in the gym. Get their number. Figure that whole thing out. Because at that point, texting wasn't that big. You had a phone, but then that phone was connected to your home and everybody in the home could hear the fucking phone ring, right? So how do you do it? It's harder. It was harder to do. Bam, the invention of the internet. All of a sudden, all this temptation is right here at your fingertips, right? Fast forward from the invention of the internet to now this, right? Your phone. This is a computer in the palm of your hand that can do incredible things, right? When it comes to relationships, right? So scratch the whole sugar baby, sugar daddy thing. That's another conversation. But when it comes to relationships, the reason that the level of infidelity skyrocketed with the invention of the internet was, again, it was just apparent. Everything was at your fingertips. Pornography, dating sites, online dating, the invention of online dating. If you guys remember, I don't remember, it was back in early 2000s, right? Ashley Madison. Ashley Madison was it was literally an infidelity website. It was a website specifically for infidelity. Came out and it was exposed as being like a really big deal. Like the hackers, I think it was called the Impact Team. There was a bunch of hackers that hacked it and leaked a lot of information, right? But everything was so quick. Everything was so easy to do. You can cheat on somebody by just getting online, right? I remember being like 14. I'm outing myself right now. But I remember being 14 and at my grandmother's house in DeSoto. She had dial-up internet, right? Half of y'all don't even know what that shit is. Dial-up internet. And to get on, you had to click, log on, right? And it would have to dial up, and it was loud as shit. Like, you could turn the speakers down, but you could still kind of hear it, right? So I'm doing this shit. I'm like 14. It's like 2:00 in the morning. I know my grandmother's asleep. Her computer was in the kitchen, and her room was like, I could see it, right? So I'm on the computer. I could see her room. So I knew if she got up, right? AOL chat rooms. Fuck with me on this real quick, right? AOL chat rooms. I don't even know what chat room I was in, right? But I thought I was risen up some fine shorty, right? I had no idea what she looked like. I don't even know her username. My username was Abercrombie G 6418, I think. So I thought I was risen this honey up, right? And what I started doing was I was typing these lyrics to a John B song. Don't listen to what people say. They don't know about you and me, blah, 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 blah. And I finished out the lyrics, and I don't even remember what the response was. But can you imagine now? That's probably a fucking 60-year-old man on the other end of that AOL chat. You never knew who you were talking to. You had no idea. You had no clue. And it's even worse now, right? So it's like the invention of the internet changed our society forever, for good, right? And dating kind of went downhill, right? Like it was trash. It started becoming harder to do in trusting the people that you're with, because when you're with somebody, you want to trust that that person is not doing something they're not supposed to do. Well, back then they had no way to really do it unless they just left the house, right? Now you could be in two separate parts of the room, like just talking to different people, right? On different dating apps, swiping right, swiping left, whatever it may be. So, anyways, the whole generational idea of like dating, because this is what I hear a lot of times, back in my day when something was broke, we fixed it. Now it's like, well, you fixed it because most of the time you really didn't have a choice, right? Like, what are your options? Where are your options, right? Now it's like, if you don't like something, all you got to do is swipe left and you're on to the next one, right? So it's like, no wonder people are hopping from relationship to relationship to relationship. When I mentioned the whole sugar baby, sugar daddy thing, it's this culture of like, if a man's got money, it's like he's a master of the universe. And there's a lot of the population of women go with it. They're like, yeah, I want a man who can take care of me because I don't have to worry about shit, right? We're going to get into another conversation about that in another topic or in another day. But anyways, back to my generational, clash topic, because again, I think it's a genuine conversation. And it's kind of like back to the whole idea of, the generation before us wanted to work hard. Now we want to work smart. There's a lot of things that I see in the media of like working from home versus in the office, 4-day work week versus a 5-day work week. A 5-day work week back in 1980, back in 1970, whenever it was almost necessary because the efficiency, the efficacy of the workforce was reliant on being in person, right? We've evolved so much since then that you can fully do a 40-hour work week from home and never have to leave your apartment, your house, whatever. But people that are running these organizations are older, so they're like, nah, fuck that, come back. We're like, why? We've been doing great. And COVID was a real like eye opener for a lot of organizations where they realized that, working from home can work as long as you structure the infrastructure around working from home, as long as it works, right? But now you're seeing a clash of generations where people are refusing to come back into the office, where there's a CEO and a COO and an ops team that is in their 50s and 60s that are like, nah, like if you're not going to come back in, you're fired, right? Like basically we need you here to do your job when they've been doing their job from home for the past 3 or 4 years. It just goes to show how much of a disconnect there is from, the initial generation to the newer generation. But I think why the millennial generation is unique, because again, we saw the work hard movement, we saw the work smart movement. Now you're either, so for me, I prefer the entrepreneurship route because of what I talked about in my last episode, the whole at-will employment. I'm not going to bust my ass for a company just for them to be like, okay, like we can't afford you, or this is happening or whatever, we're going to let you go without notice, without severance, without anything. Like being at will employed sucks. It's great when you get the job. It sucks when they take it away from you, and there's not shit you can do about it from a legal standpoint or a morality standpoint. It's easy. Like you sign the paper saying that you agree that this is at will employment and there's no promise of a job. We can let you go. Literally, look at the terms. Next time you get hired at a job, doesn't matter if it's part-time, full-time, whatever. If it's not a contracted job that has specific outlines to say you have 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, after that, we're guarantee you employment for 2 years, 3, whatever. If it's not that, read the at-will employment section. Guaranteed there's a clause in there that says, you agree that this is at-will employment. We can let you go whenever we choose. We can let you go for no reason, for no notice, without notice, so on and so forth. And you can quit without notice too. But you're signing your life away without question. Like you're not questioning it. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll sign this. And then you're like, you don't think about it again until you don't have that job anymore. And you're like, fuck, this isn't fair, right? But it's like you agreed to it. You signed the paper that said, this is okay. I'm cool with this, right? And the reason that we don't question it, in my personal opinion, is because we're too scared, right? You're too scared to question the norm. You're like, shit, well, if I question this, I might not get the job. If I say, hey, I won't sign this unless I have a guarantee of at least a year of employment, guaranteed that company's probably going to be like, okay, well, I guess this isn't going to work out, right? So now all of a sudden, that fake security that you think you have is not actually real security. You're just like, you kind of just don't question it, right? But you don't question it because you're scared. If everybody started questioning it and pushing legislation and pushing some sort of stability with it, maybe we might get somewhere, but everybody's afraid to. So that's why you're seeing a lot of entrepreneurships, people that are starting their own businesses, people that are starting their own, their own racket, whatever it may be. So anyways, I feel like I could ramble for hours along the lines of like, what's right, what's not right, what I believe is true, what I believe is not true, what I believe is, and literally this is all just my personal observations over the years. I'm 37 years old. I'll be 38 this year. There's just a lot of things that I fundamentally disagree with as a society, and I've started to question it. Like, last one. So like collections, right? You can sign a contract with a company, right? Say it's AT&T for a phone, okay? In this world, this economy, this country, you can take that debt as a company and sell it to another company to which you've had no contract with ever, right? Say it's ABC Collections. So AT&T, after a year, they don't get their money. They're like, all right, fuck this. We're going to charge this off, write it off as a bad debt, whatever. We're going to sell it to the company. We don't own this debt anymore. This debt is not ours. You don't owe us this debt anymore because we've already sold it off. We've charged it off, whatever. This collection company starts calling you. Joe from ABC Collections calls you. He's like, hey, we're calling to collect the $400 balance from AT&T. You're like, I don't have a $400 balance with AT&T. They're like, actually, you do. So we're going to take care of that with check or card, right? You're like, I'm not going to take care of that with shit, right? That company can then take you to court. It's a small claim, whatever, and sue you for a debt that you had with another company, although you have no business, no contract, no nothing with this other company, right? And the US government's like, yeah, that's cool, right? You're like, nice, right? Like you can't do shit about it, right? Until you start to stand up. This is what goes to the protesting part that I talked about before, right? You start protesting and you start telling people your truth, your reality, what you want, what you don't want, but you're telling it to people that are in their 70s, their 60s, their 80s, right? God forbid, right? Like Joe Biden, he's a funny guy, but he's old as shit. He's so old, right? And so is most of Congress, and so is most of his like a lot of people are just fucking old. You might see that as be like, oh, that's so much experience, right? But my grandmother, one of the smartest women I know, can barely work her fucking iPhone. But doesn't mean she's stupid. It just means that she's old, right? She had a BlackBerry for the longest time because she did not want to upgrade her technology. I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying that's a fact, right? She's 83 years old. No, she's 80. Yes, she's 80. And she can barely work her iPhone. She can't take a screenshot. She doesn't know what screen recording is. Her iPhone serves as a phone, text message, and things to view her pictures. That's it. She doesn't know how to do anything else, right? But we're telling our ideas, we're telling our things that we want to a group of people who have a lack of understanding of what today actually is, right? Like I saw something on CNN or something, Nancy Pelosi, right? She was like, we are not trying to ban TikTok. We are trying to make TikTok better. Tic-tac-toe. What the fuck are you talking about? Shush. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the problem, right? You think you know what you're talking about. You want to know what you're talking about. Your title makes it people assume you know what you're talking about, but you just don't. You don't. I heard people interrogating the CEO of TikTok, and you guys sounded like boobs. You made no sense. You made no sense whatsoever. Like I saw that rant about Chinese Communist Party. The guy must have said, I'm Singaporean at least 8 times. And the guy kept going. It's like, shut up. Be quiet. You sound like an idiot, right? So like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's just a losing battle because you've got this younger generation who most of the time has pretty good ideas mixed with the middle generation who's kind of like either one way or the other, or maybe might go off on their own direction. And you've got their older generation who are just stuck in their old ways and then tradition and all this other shit. but it's like nothing is meshing, nothing is making sense, right? How do we fix it? Like, how do you get around it? How, like, do we have a 40-year-old president? I think that would be fucking fantastic. Somebody who's in their 40s, like their mid to late 40s, becoming our president. Somebody who has knowledge of the past, who has knowledge of the future, who's right there in between, who can kind of, you know, have a diverse group of people that can figure out what the best way to progress forward is, right? But we argue too much about it. Anyways, again, I could go on about this for hours. I'm not. I digress. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about next time. This is Anthony Tay signing out, Tay Vision Media. See you guys soon.